Okay, so I'm going to have our presenters introduce themselves. So why don't we start with Cato?
Yeah, sure. So we actually had some slides.
Okay, great.
Introduction piece. So I'm going to share my screen and get into presentation mode with y'all. Also, as Sandra just explained, we are the youth leadership kind of arm of Transform Fresno. So we'll have just a couple of our young people coming in right now because they literally just got out of school at 2 p.m. This was the last session of the day. So we just appreciate attendees' patience. One of our young people doesn't get out till actually a little later than 2 p.m. So she'll be joining us. And when she does, we'll welcome her into the space and she'll do her introduction then. But thank you all for being here, and we're really excited to introduce ourselves and to share a little bit about the program with you. So I'm going to share my screen.
As you're getting your presentation set up, we have a message in the chat to set up the interpreting channels. I'm going to send a message to Courtney right now to make sure that is done. And then while you're setting that up, I just want to state that this particular partnership with Transform Fresno was in addition to all of the individual projects that were selected for the overall work contracted with to do the work in West Fresno. In addition to that overarching project that has all of the partners in West Fresno doing work, we were looking for very specific work to complement that, and one of it was youth engagement. So for the youth engagement piece, Transform Fresno set out a RFP, and we reviewed proposals and selected the partners to lead the youth leadership development piece. And the Youth Leadership Institute and Street Saints partnered in their application proposal, and they were awarded this particular contract. So with that, I will follow up on the interpreting channels, and we'll let Cato get started, and she will introduce the team.
Thank you for that context. So yes, so you're here for the Youth Perspective session. We have 4 of our 5 presenters here today to share with you all. Virginia will be joining us a little bit later. There we go. For some short introductions, in terms of staff with who you see on the screen, there's myself. I'm Cato. I use they, them, theirs pronouns, and I'm with Youth Leadership Institute. And then we also have Olga, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, my name is Miss Olga. I work for Fresno Street Saints EOC.
And then we also, Olga and myself as the coordinators, kind of doing the more hands-on work, getting to really get to know these young people, working day in and day out with them, over text, over email, in the virtual space. We also work very closely with some other staff members with Street Saints through EOC and Youth Leadership Institute, and I have their names up here as well. A few of them might be joining us later. There were some staff meetings they just couldn't get out of, but that is Nicole Hutchings, Joby Jones, and Sharmua, and I wanted to just uplift their names in this space because they put in a ton of work to make this happen. And then with our cohort, and they'll have a chance to introduce themselves a couple slides down, but that's Sean Brown, Michelle Gonzalez, Gabriel Ojardo, Lila Harris, Diami Hunt, Sani Mayberry, and Virginia Tao. Sean and Layla were not able to join us today for other, well, one of them has a 7th period, so they're still in class right now, unfortunately, and the other had a prior commitment, they weren't able to make it. But again, I wanted to uplift their names in this space because they put in the work. And as we were mentioned earlier, this is a collaboration between Fresno Street Saints and Youth Leadership Institute. And yeah, just a little bit of program background, some of which was already shared at the top. If you weren't aware of it, the Transform Fresno Youth Leadership Development Program, the goal of us as a community engagement partner really is to be creating a pipeline of youth leaders in the project area. So to be recruiting and training 12 youth each year over 4 years so that these young people can really be allowed to focus on both personal and professional development so that these leaders will be equipped to support and uplift local TCC projects as well as community meetings, right? So when we talk about community engagement, it's not just about adults being seen as decision makers, but young people having both the education and autonomy to be a part of that process as well, and they can't be forgotten in this. And TCC noticed that, the community noticed that, and that's where this project came out of. We also know when we're planning to run a project like this in its very first year during the pandemic, no less, that the curriculum priorities needed to be driven by young people and for young people. I mean, in the pandemic, we've seen that young people don't necessarily even want to show up for school. Some days I don't want to show up to work. These are trying times, right? So we want to make sure that what we're delivering programmatically and the space that we're creating really serves them so that we're recruiting and retaining leaders that are honored by the program that we're providing. And so some of the top priorities in terms of the curriculum that we're going to be building out for the next 4 years really hone in on environmental justice, the history of Transform Fresno, wellness and advocacy, budget and financial literacy, and leadership fundamentals. And you may see some of these and think this is a very like natural, okay, right, TCC, we gotta know environmental justice. We've had some really rich discussions about the need for learning about environmental racism in school and all these blind spots in our traditional education, and how programs like this one can really help to alleviate the stress of not getting to know about some of your own history as a community until maybe you leave it and you learn about it in college. And naturally, you need to know the history of Transform Fresno because it is rich as part of a very oral and on the record history in Southwest Fresno. We were really lucky to speak with Pastor Lee Pointer and some other community members who have kind of been involved with the process since day one to deliver the history of this program to our participants. But when it comes to young people getting involved in advocacy, wellness is a very big part of that curriculum for us as well, because the work that we do is really on a foundation of trust and relationship building and safety. And the burnout is real. The burnout happens fast. So wellness and advocacy spaces and mental health was something that the youth raised as something they wanted as a part of their curriculum. And if we're talking about TCC, a project that has a lot of dollars behind it, a lot of planning behind it, a lot of just nitty gritty behind it, budget and financial literacy is super important for these young people that are going to find themselves in community meetings and spaces with elected officials and decision makers who know the buzzwords, who know the big words, but also for their own personal development as folks that might not have this knowledge within their own networks, right? So budgeting and financial literacy are a part of this, and we're super lucky to be able to kind of contract out and rely upon formerly had relationships with partners with banks and folks with local colleges who are able to come in and speak to our youth about these pieces. And then of course, the leadership fundamentals, one of the reasons that we're here, right? For public speaking, for being confident talking to an elected official, and also being able to kind of redefine what a leadership fundamental is, because it's not just the putting on a blazer and speaking in front of folks. And those are some of the priorities that the youth kind of raised as what they wanted their curriculum to look like. So it's a little bit of a background about how we got here and what the program's all about. But now to the fun stuff, the cohort introductions. So I wanted to just show you all their wonderful headshots. Shout out to everyone who got me their headshot for our youth, for our young people. I haven't checked yet. Not everyone is able to be on camera today, and that's okay. Going back to that safety and trust, you know, they just all got out of class, and I understand if you don't want to be on camera right now. I'm very excited to hear everyone's voice, but I wanted you to be able to see from left to right. On the top, we have Michelle, Sean, Diami, and Layla, and on the bottom left to right, we have Sani, Virginia, and Gabriel. And again, I wanted you to be able to see their faces as like Sean and Layla weren't able to be here today. But yeah, and I'm going to turn the floor over to them here in just a second to just give you a little bit more background about themselves as people, because their lived experiences that they bring to the work makes for a very, very, very rich, both in terms of breadth and depth, background to the kinds of work that they want to pursue, and kind of the perspective that they're going to bring when they are speaking to the decision making that should be happening around some of these projects. And again, the youth perspective, why we're here. And with that, if she's ready to go, I will pass it to Michelle.
Hi, my name is Michelle. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I go to Edison. In my free time, I enjoy gardening and baking because I find it to be very therapeutic. And I am a part of this program because I really want to see change in Southwest Fresno. And I also was a former permaculture youth leader.
Awesome. Thank you, Michelle. I think that's it. Correct me if I'm wrong. But with that, I will pass it to Diami.
Oh, hello. I'm Diami, and I'm part of this program because I've lived in Fresno for all 16 years of my life, and I've always thought to myself, like, I live in Southwest Fresno, and I've just always thought to myself, there's a few changes that need to happen. So, like, being here, I finally have like the opportunity to help create those changes that I want to see. And some of my favorite hobbies to do is probably longboarding. I'm not very good at it, but it's pretty fun. And yeah, that's a little bit about me. And I hope we could see each other again.
Awesome. Thanks. With that, we'll pass it over to Sani.
Hi, my name is Soni. My pronouns is her, she, and hers. I go to Edison, and outside of Fresno, I'm trying to further my modeling and acting career. And I don't know, because I am going to do it, but the way that it's set up, most of it's going to be in LA, and I'm trying to figure out if I should go down there when I graduate. So that's probably been one of my biggest focus. And I'm a part of this program because I've noticed a lot of violence that's been happening recently. And with this program, we like work together. And first it was kind of about the money, but then I realized like we actually do work together, and I really like being a part of this program. And I feel like we can really change things. And my projects that I worked on is I'm a part of the Stop the Violence program. And I love working with the community. That's probably one of my favorite things. And I love working with children as well. And I've done food giveaways in my past. We have a boxing program. We did fashion shows for the children and young ones. And we've also did block parties. So it's kind of like working with community, basically. That's what I love to do.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. And Virginia, I think, is still in class, so we will pass it over to Gabriel and give Virginia a chance to share when she's able to join us.
Hello, everybody. My name is Gabriel Ojardo. He, him, his. I go to Edison High School as a junior. I'm a part of the Fresno Boys and Men of Color, as well as Transform Fresno. And some of the things I do outside of this work is I love sports. I play sports all the time, whether it be football, basketball. I'm not very good at it, but I also wrestle. I do shot put, discus. I've practiced paintball and airsofting both. I love being active, being physical. But I'm also a bit of a nerd. I love sci-fi. I love fantasy, video games. Those things just all intrigue me so much. The reason I'm a part of Transform Fresno is I was actually a part of a different program, the Fresno Boys and Men of Color under YLI, with Cato, and they came to me. And Sure came to me and said, "Hey, we understand, some of the things that you've felt with in Southwest Fresno, being born and raised here for 17 years. I've seen a lot of things go down that, shouldn't have gone down or should have been changed in some way. And they gave me an opportunity to be able to change that. So I just feel really, really proud to be able to elicit a change in my community."
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. And I noticed that Nicole has joined us. Thank you for getting out of your meeting. Nicole, if you'd like to just give yourself a quick little introduction. We gave you a shout out at the beginning, but now that you're here.
Good afternoon, everybody. I had a staff meeting that was scheduled before this was scheduled, or before I knew about this. So I'm the administrative and development coordinator for to be partnered with YLI, and I'm just happy to see all these beautiful faces, the young folks on the screen. It's been a while since I've been in a meeting with you guys, because Miss Olga took my spot. But I'm happy to be here. I heard a couple of the stories, and they're great stories. And hi, Sandra. Thank you, guys.
Awesome. And I'm just double checking to see if Virginia's made it in yet. I'm pretty sure she might not get out till 2:30, hoping she'll get out a little earlier. But I also see that Joby got out of the meeting also a little early. Woo. Joby, if you want to give yourself a little intro.
Hi, how y'all been? How y'all doing? I actually tried to get on Sunny's Zoom, but she kicked me out, so I had to get on my other. So it's a blessing to see all you beautiful people. We thank you guys for the work that you guys are doing and how you guys are really took an interest into this project and where you guys are headed with it. So we appreciate you guys. Stay committed, and been hearing great things about you. Kato's the best, so Olga's the best. So we rocking with y'all. Love y'all.
Awesome. So thank you all for your introductions. Thank you, attendees, for your listening ears. If you have had a presentation like this before, you might think it's easy to speak about yourself, but it can be a little tough. So I just really appreciate the vulnerability from our cohort in sharing about not just who they are, this is my name, this is where I go to school, but their personal connection to the work, because that's what makes them, I think, such dynamic leaders in this space. And with that, I'm going to be passing over most of the mic to Gabriel and Michelle, who are going to be facilitating kind of the bulk of our presentation today, which is a bit of an interactive activity. So attendees, I know that you are not able to be on like mic with us, but we're hoping that you'll be active participants in the chat, and that you will do so by clicking to all panelists and attendees when you use the chat. And you'll still hear the voices of your panelists, of course, as we move forward. But I will be putting a link to something called Jamboard in the chat. And it's something that all of you panelists and attendees can follow and be participating on. I'll also be screen sharing it so you can see as we go. So if Gabe and Michelle just want to give me a second to pull that up.
And Cato, while you're pulling that up, I'm going to be monitoring the Facebook because we're on Facebook Live to see if there are any comments there, and I will try to bring that into our discussion. So if you all see my head turning, it's not because I'm not paying attention to you. I have my laptop here and I'm monitoring the Facebook Live.
Yeah, just to get us started a little bit, Four Corners is essentially an activity to where there are going to be four types of opinions, I guess, in a space. Typically, if we were in a room, we would run to one of four corners. It would be strongly agree, agree, disagree, or strongly disagree, such as what Cato has on the board right now. There's going to be an opinion in the middle, and you just have to go to whatever side. Luckily for Jamboard, you will be able to post a sticky note with your opinion, your name, be able to post it on your corner. There are no wrong answers in Four Corners, so please do not feel offended or do not feel like you can't put your opinion out there. There are no wrong answers in terms of everybody has lived out different lives or have experienced different things, so they don't know what someone else has, or they only know what they know, right? To get started, we're going to get together with community agreements, and these are essentially agreements made by all the attendees and all the presenters here that through chat or voice, to make this activity just safer or more, just to make it better for all of us to be able to access all of it and to have fun while we're doing it. I'm going to pass this to Michelle to get us started with one community agreement, and then we're going to see and have the rest come from chat or from other presenters.
assuming people are coming with good intentions, no matter what their answers are in the Jamboard. We're assuming they're not trying to be, well, they're not coming with ill intentions.
I like that one. And like Gabriel shared, if any attendees want to put one, offer one up in the chat, we'll totally make sure it gets put here.
A very common one to get started with is I'd mentioned this before in the introduction to Four Corners, but it's don't yuck your yum, where if don't say bad on somebody other's opinion or what they feel like. If somebody likes, I can't remember the example we always use, but I think it's like peanut butter and sardine sandwiches or something like that. If somebody likes it, just, you know, they like it, just let them have it to them.
Maybe if we could get like one more.
One more would be to actively listen and be a part of the activity.
I think Johnny has a great one, Mr. Menendez. What is learned here leaves here. If you want to explain a little bit on how that on your thought process a little bit on how it works a little bit, that'd be greatly appreciated.
Yeah, I think when we say what is learned here leaves here, it's that idea that people might be sharing something vulnerable. So we don't necessarily want to take someone's like story and say, hey, I heard that Gabriel said this. We want to take the lesson that we learned away from the space. So kind of honoring folks' narratives and not necessarily telling everyone their business, but taking the lessons away from the space is okay.
I like that one, Daniel. I like be a croissant, not a bagel. That one's really nice. Be open-minded with new ideas and not closed off. And thank you all for giving us your community agreements. It's not over just a bit yet. But it does reassure us that we did share it to all the attendees, because we all want to make sure that all the attendees get to be able to see it and have access to it, and to be able to interact with us so we can interact with them.
Awesome. So we have assuming people are coming from good intentions, don't yuck my yum, actively listen to be part of the activity, what is learned here leaves here, and be a croissant, not a bagel, or be open-minded. So if we feel pretty good about these community agreements, if we agree that we want to move forward in this activity, honoring these agreements together, could I see some head nods, some thumbs ups, some yeses or emojis in the chat? And yeah, thank you for throwing the Jamboard link back into the chat in case anyone joined us late, Gabriel. I'm seeing some nods, I'm seeing some yeses, some thumbs ups. Thank you, everybody. And with that, I'm going to move us over to Michelle.
Okay, so this first one is just a fun one to get the game going, and it is, does pineapple belong on pizza?
Now remember, there are no wrong answers. You can put whatever you want. You can put your sticky note wherever you want on the screen. If you go to the left below the mouse, like Kato's doing right now, that's how you access it. And then we're gonna give it a minute or two, and then when we get most of the the opinions out. We're gonna probably most likely randomly pick or check from the chat why you put it there, or maybe your thought process or anything like that on it.
And if for some reason you're struggling to get on the Jamboard, or maybe you've joined via phone, and so it's kind of hard to do both, you can always put your viewpoint into the chat and we will type your name up and put it on the Jamboard for you. I love to see how this was a very quick decision for some people and taken some time for some others.
So it's been about 2 minutes, and I apologize if it's not enough time for all of you to get your voices onto the Jamboard or into the chat. You can continue to put your opinions in the chat or onto the back onto the Jamboard. But I am going to start off with the one section that didn't have anything, and then I'm going to pass to Michelle for all the other sections. I personally don't like pineapple on pizza. I don't like the sweet and the savory. I don't think it mixes very well. So I personally would go into strongly disagree. It's not for me. I don't like it. I've never liked it. So now I'm going to pass on to Michelle to pick someone from each square, and maybe give us a little bit of your thought process and whatnot.
Okay, I'm gonna pick Sandra on why she strongly agrees.
So pineapple is one of my favorite fruits. The texture, the sweetness, I think goes in cake and in pizza. I like the combination of it on a pizza. So that is why I strongly agree.
I agree with you on that strongly.
Canadian bacon and pineapple with cheese on that hot crust pizza.
Okay, Michelle, who are we going to call on next from maybe another square, see another perspective?
I'll go with JV. Why did you disagree?
So JV is putting in the chat, I don't like pineapples in general, and it's definitely a weird vibe. Thank you for your honest opinion. And let me spell pineapples correctly. I don't like pineapples in general. Very valid opinion. And that means our last corner would be the agree corner. Michelle, who are we going to?
Chris.
All right. Well, I agree because I like the sweetness with something salty, but it's not my favorite. So I don't normally choose it. If somebody presents it to me, I will eat it. Absolutely. But I don't normally choose it.
Awesome. Thank you all for participating. So Michelle kind of led us through this very first 4 corners just to get us comfortable with using the Jamboard, kind of knowing the rules of the game and just the formatting. Thank you folks for knowing that you can use the chat if the Jamboard isn't working for you or if you don't feel like being on audio. But we're going to get into kind of the meat or the more kind of serious reason why we're using this Jamboard today, which is the fact that it's a very, I think, youth-friendly and conversation starting tool to have discussions that might be a little difficult. So this is why we had those community agreements. I'm going to go back to them one more time to remember, folks, we want to assume people are coming from good intentions. We don't want to yuck people's yums. We want to be actively listening. We want to know that what is learned here is leaving here, but not necessarily everyone's personal business. We're being vulnerable when we talk about our opinions and our lived experiences, which is what gets us to these opinions in the first place. And we want to have an open mind, be a croissant, not a bagel. And with that, I'm going to pass it back to Michelle to lead us in our first true four corners of the day.
Okay, now this one is kind of setting how optimistic we are, and it is meaningful change in Southwest Fresno is possible.
And if you're a little new at navigating Jamboard, you just click over to the next page. And again, if you're just following along on the screen share and you want to post it in the chat, I will put your name down for us.
So Cato, this is Sandra. This is one of the ways that you have engaged our youth during this time of COVID as part of the cohort, as part of the work, right? For what you all have proposed to do as part of your proposal.
Correct. Some of what we've had to do as a team, myself, Olga, Joby, Nicole, and Sher, has been translating things, that curriculum pieces, team building, trust building, conversation starting, dialogue building, all things that are much easier to do face-to-face, in person, with movement, with pictures on the wall, with flip charts and whiteboards and food and in-person meetings. We've had to translate it to a virtual setting. And so this is one of those activities that's kind of part of our bread and butter. It's called Four Corners. Gabriel did a great job of explaining at the beginning. Usually we're in a space together. We might post up in one corner of a room, strongly agree, or if it's a room that we can write on the walls, we'll write on the wall, and everyone starts in the middle. We might post something up either in writing or on a PowerPoint, and then everyone has like a few seconds to run to their corner. But this is one way that we've, translated some of what we're used to doing to the virtual space. So yes.
Thanks for confirming that.
Of course. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Michelle. As it seems, we have something that almost never happens in Four Corners, but we have some just total agreement.
Okay, I'm gonna call on Marcus. Why did you choose strongly agree?
And folks that are attendees are welcome to select all panelists and attendees and put it in the chat, and we'll gladly read out your view. If you're comfortable sharing it, if you'd like to pass, you can also let us know. So we have Marcus in the chat sharing all things are possible through Jesus Christ, a faith-based, strongly agree to have faith in meaningful change being possible in Southwest Fresno. Thank you for sharing your view. Michelle, let's call on maybe like one or two other folks from our same corner, since that's where we all are.
Okay, I'm gonna go with Johnny next.
So I believe Johnny is going to chat it.
We appreciate attendees' flexibility and active participation in this activity. We weren't sure if we would be normal Zoom style where most folks would be able to speak or webinar style, but we knew y'all would be able to participate with us one way or another. So we definitely appreciate it. And while Johnny is typing, can we maybe hear from Sani, who has mic privileges? Why do you strongly agree?
I strongly agree because the way that I see, well, I used to see before COVID came, how the block parties used to like everybody like having a good time and stuff, like it's making me really believe that it could be changed.
Cool. So you've seen like other community-based orgs, other community folks getting together and being able to like make things happen, and that's giving you some hope. We love to hear it.
Because it's mostly in the west side, the southwest.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. And we have Johnny in the chat. I was at Edison way back in the day, lol, class of 2004, whoop, whoop. So I've seen some of the small changes that have happened since then. Now, as a youth work/youth advocate, I have seen firsthand just how powerful youth voice is. Y'all can move mountains. Awesome. So the faith is pretty strong. Michelle, I would love, why do you think so many of us are in the strongly agree corner? Like, what does that say to you?
To me, it says that change has been possible over time. For me personally, I have been a part of the Yeovil Community Garden. I was a permaculture youth leader, and I know that change is possible. And that's why I think we strongly agree, because we can work together as a community to get things going.
Dope. Awesome. Thank you for sharing. Thank you, folks, for being willing to share your view on this slide. I think starting in a place of optimism for a project like TCC, something that has taken so much time and will continue to take time in the face of the issues that it's seeking to challenge and take head on, is incredibly important. And we talk about that a lot in this space. With that, I'm going to pass it over to Gabriel for our next slide. And all of you folks on Jamboard can slide over to page 4.
Yeah, thank you, Cato. The next question or the next opinion is saying the parks in my area or in my neighborhood are in good condition. This can relate to any neighborhood you live in, maybe when you answer or where you put. If we choose to pick on you, if you could give us a little bit of where you grew up in. If you could give us a little bit of where you grew up in, or maybe how the parks were, or like what's the nearest park you grew up in. Just to give everybody a little bit of aspect of how that park was or how you see parks. I'm gonna give about 2 minutes or so. Thank you everybody who shared so far. I'm gonna give about another 30 seconds, minute, just to let everybody be able to put their things in chat. I'm looking in the chat and making sure Kato put the sticky notes on there.
And Gabriel, before we bring folks in to share their opinions from their corners, Virginia did make it in after class. Thank you. I'd love for us to be able to pause and if she's ready to give her introduction before we move forward. Virginia, if that's all right with you.
Yes. Okay. Hi. I just made it back from CART and it's 2:30. So hi. I'm Virginia Chow. I'm a senior at Edison and part of the Transform Fresno cohort. A little bit about me is that I'm Hmong and I'm a senior, and yeah, and I like shoes, and this work matters to me because being in this cohort, living in Fresno, I see like that and the good, and like I feel like this could like really cause a change in my community and the Southwest community too. And yeah, a thing that I worked on is the permaculture garden too. And yeah, and I'm very excited to see the end result of this cohort and see how it transforms Fresno. And yeah, that's me.
Awesome. Thank you so much for rushing over here post-CART, post-class. We really appreciate it. And I'm going to turn it back over to Gabriel to hear some opinions about the state of parks in folks' neighborhoods. We have kind of opinions all over the place.
Yeah. Oh, thank you, Sandra, for putting your opinion in the chat, saying you grew up in Chandler. You know, there's been some recent improvements at Chandler Park, but it's not nearly enough. And it has only been recent. So I'm guessing within the last year or so to 6 months. West Fresno, you're saying that West Fresno has been overlooked and under-resourced for far too long. And I personally agree with you in the strongly disagree category. I see we have no one in the strongly agree. So it seems that most people think that parks can improve or parks are in a decent shape or can be better. I'm going to turn to the agree box. I'm going to pick, who have I not picked on? I want to say Daniel. Daniel, if you could maybe share with us a close park or any reasons why you say why, you know, parks in your area have been good, or are they in good condition, or why you agree with that?
And we might need to give them just a sec to put it in the chat as they're one of our attendees. We also have someone from Disagree sharing that when their uncle Joe Wingfield was involved with the parks, they stayed looking nice, more than one staff member on site, activities, field trips, etc. Frank H. Ballpark, Fink White, Hinton Center, etc. So kind of speaking to the things that we want to see in parks. And if we don't see it, maybe our parks aren't in that great of condition if we don't have enough folks staffing it, not enough activities being there, field trips being able to go there. Those are things we want to see at our parks. Understandable. Marcus, thanks for sharing.
Yeah, thank you, Marcus. I know, those are like the 3 closest parks to Fresno, to Southwest Fresno, and they haven't been kept up in the greatest of shape in the last couple of years. The park I went to, and I believe, a couple of us all went to as a kid, I had to go all the way to Kearney. I went all the way to Kearney Park to go and be able to be safe and have fun. I just see that Daniel posted into the chat that you currently live in North Fresno and the closest park is Woodward, which is well kept with lots of pathways to walk, bike. But growing up in South Fresno, though, you don't remember the closest park was to your house other than your local school playground. which can, you can be heavily affected when the closest area green space for that matter is locked off and only available for about half an hour during the weekdays.
So knowing that access to parks, green space in general is such an important part of our mental and our physical health, such an important part to the environment around us, speaking to the fact that the parks in our neighborhood aren't in good condition can be incredibly stressful, incredibly even sad at times. But we know that Transform Fresno is doing stuff to directly, challenge this issue. Gabriel, do you want to talk at all about any of the projects that we know about that are directly, meeting this challenge head on?
Yes. Thank you, Cato. Plug not advised. Two projects that we have been working on, or that Transform Fresno has worked on, is the Southwest Fresno Trail, the Southwest Fresno Trail, which this project has been planning to install a trail along the Fanning Ditch to increase tree canopies, lighting to said trail, and to increase product on the nearby streets. And the other one that has been mentioned out before is the Yeovil Community Garden, which I believe I have also worked on, if it's the right one I'm thinking about. Cato's nodding their head, so yes, it is the one I worked on, which essentially is for the community in that area having literally no green space. I have close friends in that area. It can provide them fresh fruits, fresh berries, and just look nice and look very, very well in the area. It's starting to look very beautiful. And with that, I believe that's everything. We can move along, and I'm going to pass it to Michelle for the next slide.
Okay, so this next slide deals with food deserts, and there are multiple grocery stores to choose from in my neighborhood, meaning you don't have to drive out to a different side of town to access groceries.
Well, people are selecting one of the four corners. I just want to be mindful of the time. And so we will be in our final 6 to 7 minutes.
So for our attendees, if you had any questions for our youth or more details about the program, you can always visit the Transform Fresno website, but this is also a space where you can do that. And we do want to hold a few minutes at the end for Q&A if there are any, but you can start even now in between the Jamboards, pop in those questions either into the chat or into the Q&A box at the bottom of the Zoom, and we'll get to those at the end. But yes, thank you all again for participating. This is the main thing we're doing today. We're here to explain a little bit about our program and just, have some dialogue with you all about, the different parts of maybe Fresno that we're coming from as attendees and panelists, how we interact with these issues, and, sow a little seed of hope around some optimism with the projects that Transform Fresno has brought to the space. So again, thank you for participating, and throw any questions you have into the chat, into the Q&A box. And we'll get to those at the end. And it looks like a lot of our folks have put their names down if we wanted to start hearing some opinions while other folks are finding themselves in their corners.
So maybe Cato, while people are typing their responses in the chat box, will you, I think one of our cohort participants alluded to a stipend or a payment that our youth are getting as part of the cohort. I know in many projects that I've been involved with, when we want to engage the community, We do give stipends because if I'm going on behalf of my organization, I'm getting paid. It's part of my role there. But, when we engage the community, they're not, with an organization that we're inviting. We want their experience and expertise. So we don't need the amounts, but, is it, well, we heard from one of our participants that was the initial kind of thing that caught her attention. So do you want to speak a little to that?
Yeah, definitely. And if any youth wanted to speak to that too, just about like the difference sometimes between when you do stuff for free and when you get to have a little bit of a stipend for it, definitely you can either put it in the chat or when I'm done speaking, I'd love for you to come off of mute if you had any thoughts about it. But so often, if not just more often than not, if not almost always, young people are asked to do stuff for free all the time, just to be frank, right? They are asked to share their stories, to be vulnerable, to give their time, to be volunteers, to be lobbyists, to be the conduits of so much change, to really catalyze movements, to lead movements, to do so much on their free time. And as you've heard from their introductions, our young people aren't just advocates. They're not just students. They're also athletes. They are also artists. They are also community leaders within their own spaces and their own cultures. They are like incredibly multifaceted folks. And we know that in Fresno, not just in Southwest Fresno, but across the county, not just the city, but the county, youth jobs is like a huge issue for young people. And it cuts across, most socioeconomic and demographic markers. And so to be able to pay young people a bit equitably for their time, which is a top priority for Street Saints and YLI as folks that we're going to be in charge of this contract, we need to be able to, support our youth. And so that was just a really important thing for us, is to be able to say, like, we see you giving us your time and we want to honor that time. And speaking of time, I'm getting our 2-minute warning. And I just want to uplift in the chat. We have JV from the Disagree Corner speaking to that in his neighborhood near Fresno State, there's only one grocery store that's easily accessible by foot. Otherwise, nearby are gas stations and liquor stores. You're speaking as someone in Central Fresno, and South and Southwest Fresno know about liquor store saturation and being able to find a liquor store way easier than a grocery store. Kelly is speaking to being in a rural area, so no stores. They're from the Strongly Disagree Corner. So yeah, and then we have some folks that are in Agree, and I'm gonna, as someone who's in Agree, I'm gonna just share, since I haven't gone quite yet, that I live in 93704. I live in District 1, and I have a grocery store in walking distance, but if I get in my car, there are quite a few in the area. And that's like a huge privilege for me. And when I go to someone else's neighborhood and notice that there's no grocery stores, I'm just like, wait, what? The fact that I can walk to a grocery store is a really big deal. And we need that in Southwest Fresno. So here, when we're asking folks to speak to having choices, not just one store, but choices of where you get your food from, choices of where you get affordable food from. And I know Sandra put in the chat earlier that there's just Food Max, and folks who are from or know about Southwest Fresno's history at all know that just getting that Food Max was a fight. It wasn't an easy job to get that Food Max in this neighborhood. But this slide really is getting at an issue of food desertization. And before we go, I'd love for Michelle to just be able to uplift a few of the projects that are doing really great work to combat the state of food desertization in Southwest Fresno.
2 projects are the Inside Out Community Garden and the Yeovil Permaculture Community Garden, where they are providing access to fresh fruits and vegetables through a farm stand. And they want to break the generational stigma about growing food.
And I see, and I don't know if we're going to get kicked off since it's 2:55 or if we get all the way to 3, but we have one more question in the chat. Curious to hear from the youth about what would make them feel safe outdoors, plazas, places that doesn't require you to spend money to feel like you belong. Any of the youth that are here, what makes you feel safe outdoors?
I'd like to be able to answer this question personally. Growing up, I'm about a mile away from Edison High School. I am about half a mile away from King Elementary, where I went to elementary, and it is not the safest place in the world. Me and my little brother, we witnessed a murder when we were very young, gang violence, walking home from school when I was in first grade, and it kind of changed my life. A prediction. I always knew that that it was dangerous to be out and about. My mom never liked past 5 o'clock, past 6 o'clock. You got to be home. You have to make sure you're home. It was only recently until I started doing sports that I could actually stay out a little bit